Well, how do you do, everybody? It's Hotline League, episode 164. And boy, am I excited to be here. There's so much to talk about tonight because we are headed into playoffs, everybody. That's right, it is playoffs time. We're getting some playoffs action going here on Hotline League.
It's playoffs. Cadril and LS are fighting each other.
Oh, no. Are we doing that?
No, I don't think we're really doing that. It's just it's on Reddit right now.
All right. Well,
Alienware, that thing.
There's stuff to talk about. There's stuff we won't talk about. and it's most of what Mark just mentioned. And we're going to take all sorts of calls. First off, let me go ahead and shout out to Alienware and GameFuel for sponsoring the show. Mountain Dew GameFuel, really appreciate their sponsorship. Mark is my constant co-host and is here. Mark, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. I'm excited for playoffs.
Anything interesting happened this past week for you?
I got a pastry holder. So the muffins I bake now can go right in the pastry holder, and it looks like a legit cafe in my kitchen. It's pretty dope. I should post a picture.
Okay, when I think of a legit cafe, I think of you walk in and there's like a glass sort of dome situation.
Yeah. Imagine that, but shrunk down to fit on your countertop.
Okay. And you bake muffins now? You have not mentioned this previously to me.
So Ashley found a recipe for these honey banana muffins that is just dope as hell. So hold on, let me just post to Twitter and then you can look at it.
Okay. Can you post it as your way of promoting the show? And with a link saying that we've begun? Because that would be helpful. At least
I'm just posting the link. You can intro Peter while I do this.
Well, let's move on to our guest for the night, the day. The whole time loop thing has changed in the past 48 hours. Now I'm confused. Peter Dunn is here, coach for Evil Geniuses. Peter, do you want to introduce yourself and sort of your history in League Esports since this is the first time you've been on the show?
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Peter Dunn. I'm the head coach of Evil Geniuses. I've worked in various regions before. You may know me as the guy who was helping to coach Madlands to their play-ins performance last year.
Right.
That's my most recent international performance. Other than that, looking forward to talking all things NA.
Yeah.
I know you from having the most clipped but insightful tweets ever. You I don't know when you started doing them, but you had like these really short tweets that used like lingo that was like.
Oh, I remember that. Okay, so 5 years ago, I missed qualifying for Worlds. So I did one tweet summaries of all the games.
Yeah.
Just summarized every single game and then did a second tweet if something interesting happened. But yeah, wow, I've completely forgotten I used to do this.
Yeah, and they were so I don't know, you had to because I think this was back when it was 140 characters too.
Yes,
so you'd summarize a game in the 140 characters, and it was almost unreadable unless you just filled in words on your own for what you were saying. It was really fun.
Yeah.
I just realized that I really your tweet is so awful and will drive no traffic to this, Mark.
Dude, but
compared to the normal ones you do
that...
where it's a screenshot of the stream and you're in all capital letters with some clickbait and all that stuff. This is atrocious.
I disagree. I already have 3 people replying. That's more engagement.
Do you have the thing where you can look at your Twitter analytics, individual Twitter analytics, right? View tweet activity. Do you have that?
Yeah.
Okay, so how many people have clicked the link that you put in it versus last week's?
Link clicks 2. All right.
Cool. So I think the fact that you've had 2 people click it.
Hold on. I got to compare it to the other ones.
Okay.
All right.
Astro's Edge in Twitch chat right now says, please upload these to Spotify. And I can only imagine Astro's Edge. I'm not trying to call it Astro's Edge, but I'm going to anyway. Astro's Edge must have come to this channel and typed, please upload these to Spotify. having done zero search whatsoever on Spotify. Because I'm pretty sure since, we're on episode 164. I'm pretty sure since episode 8, these have been on Spotify. And I see that stuff sometimes, and it blows my mind.
All right. The Emily Rand one had 181 link clicks by the end of the night. Okay. So we're going to go find out exactly how many, just a picture of my kind of cafe setup.
Because there's not even, the thing is that people miss even the fact that there's a link there. They just see the muffins. I saw
Flickery dickory doc, these tweets are sure to rock, tweeted 12 seconds ago. Oh, wait, this means Hotline League is on. Thanks, Mark Zimmerman.
Yeah,
Mission accomplished.
That person came here from my Twitch chat, and
everyone go click the link to fuck with the analytics as a...
Whoever that is, that's an awesome Twitter name.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into... So first off, maybe we ask Peter a couple questions about coaching AG. Mark,
yeah,
I don't know if you you want to throw any his way at the start after you've tweeted your muffins.
I mean, I would just like to hear a little bit about how NA has been coaching here. I mean, I know you had
it's 3 weeks, right?
Yeah. You had an interview and stuff I think I saw on the front page of Reddit not too long ago as well talking about this. But in case anyone missed it, just how's it been here as a scene, and then also with EG in particular?
It's been great. I mean, I feel like I've been misled about the climate in California. It's been cold and raining for the entire time that I've been here, which is a good thing for me as a Brit. I mean, all I can say is, I've been here for 3 weeks. It's really great to meet the guys. I mean, obviously we have a roster full of veterans, so it's mainly been about, rather than pure teaching, it's been partly coaching, partly negotiation for how we're going to play a single game style when all of these kind of veteran players have all of their competing styles for how they want to play the game. So it's been fun. We've also been working with Amateur and Academy, who had their series today. Wasn't the greatest series. It was decided at level 1 in both games, and both games ended in 25 minutes. But it's been fun working with those guys too. So I'm really glad to be here. It's been hard working from Europe because the delay in communication kind of made it impossible to lead review and that kind of thing. So
yeah, Mark, did you know he only got here around the same time as Broxa? His visa issues paralleled the Broxa stuff.
I didn't follow as closely as when he got here. I knew for lock-in and through the first week, Peter wasn't with the team, but I didn't know when he exactly got in.
I arrived the same day as Broxa, basically. But obviously, I can still coach. I just can't do, team coaching. It's just one-to-one coaching and analyst and scouting and that kind of thing.
Yeah. How have you worked much with Kelsey directly?
Kelsey and I talk quite a lot, just in general. But it's been good working with her. She's mainly doing stuff on the collegiate and the amateur and the academy side, so she doesn't do anything with the main team. But yeah, we work together a lot, especially with academy and amateur. It's been really great working with her.
You tweeted something yesterday. Somebody tweeted at you and was like, "What's it like to work with?" Hang on, I need to go find this. What's it like to work with a player who how do you coach a player that runs it down mid? And you said, "Sorry, no idea. I've never had a mid laner who plays like this before."
Yeah, I mean, the only two mid laners I've worked with in the past 3 years have been Humanoid and Jizuke, and neither of those fit that archetype. So
okay.
I'm afraid I just don't have the experience in this area.
Yes.
I don't know. He did get first blooded in a unbreakable record in the CLG game. I don't think it's physically possible to die faster in a pro game than that one.
Yeah, I mean, that was very impressive. I mean, I'm impressed. But I mean, the key thing is that CLG don't win any games where they get first blood, right? So he was just securing us the victory.
Oh,
tactical int.
It was how quickly could he get? I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Well, we wouldn't want to accidentally have Svenska and invade and get a kill on first buff. So he was just securing the win. We needed a win.
Nice.
Very blessed.
Genius. Okay. Well, I'm sure a lot of people have more questions for Peter as the night goes on, but a couple different things. So now we have our 6 teams. We know when they're going to be playing. Folks can go over to. I'm not going to pull all of it up, but people can go over to laltesports.com to see the schedule. Excuse me, in the bracket. What's interesting is that there's a format change now for. So, and by the way, it's actually, they've renamed it. It's no longer spring split playoffs. It's now mid-season series, Mark?
Mid-season showdown.
Showdown, that's right. And previously, I think what would have happened is we would have had like an EG Dig matchup, I think, to start things like that. We wouldn't have started with the spicy matches. No offense, Peter. We would, but now we're starting with TL, TSM, C900 Thieves. We're starting in the upper bracket, which I think is very interesting. So we get like straight into some really crazy games, especially that TSM TL game, because I think a lot of people are curious. Like, I think a lot of people project C9 into the finals, and they're curious who's going to join them there. So that'll be fun. Wait, was it this exact same last time, Mark?
What?
People are saying that the schedule and everything was the same last time.
There were 8 teams last time, no?
Well, for spring.
In spring, there was 6.
But did they have the schedule start in the upper bracket like this?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I would need to look back, but I'm pretty sure it's the same, yeah.
I mean, so Sherman says it's a very similar format to last year. So I'm going to say that there are some changes. And that's what I'm going with. I'm excited by the little changes that they made to make it even better.
Well, so I'm pretty sure there were 3 games a week, and it was over 3 weekends. I think there's 2 games a week, and it's over 4 now. Maybe I'm crazy. I could be crazy.
I mean, all I say is it's fantastic for us. We get 14 days before we have to play our first game, and we don't have to play. We don't have to play Dignitas. We're 0-2 against this season.
I love this new format. By the way.
You dodged them. That's why you guys went for 6. You knew they were going to end up 5th.
Yeah. We'll leave it. We'll leave it to Cloud 900 Thieves.
Yeah.
Regardless, so we got that. We can take a bunch of calls on that. How do people think the games are going to go this weekend, and the strength of the different teams? Obviously, EG questions for Peter, and then I think what's fun about this show, which we get twice a year, is I have not cast my votes for MVP or All Pro, or I guess like coaching staff. Maybe Peter can convince me that AG deserves coaching staff. I don't know. But Mark, have you cast yours yet?
No.
Okay.
With the dive and all this stuff going on, and we have meetings today, I just don't have time.
And Peter, I don't know. Have you you vote? I assume.
Yeah, we vote.
Okay, and you have probably not cast yours yet.
No, I haven't cast it.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say, Hotline League callers. You have in this moment
build our ballots.
You have in this moment the chance to sway, make arguments, convince us. Just let us know. Like maybe we're wrong in our assumptions. I don't think we can say where we're leaning at or how we're going to vote because you're not supposed to reveal how you're voting. But you can call in right now and make your argument for why you think X player deserves to be MVP or on the all team or whatever, coaching staff, etc. So I think that's also really fun because obviously starting soon that will start to get revealed. So that's how the show will go. Anything? Oh, Mark, I don't know. Anything else we want to talk about?
No, I already polled some people for some playoff predictions. Pulled some stuff about talent development. And,
you're
MVP.
Already polling people.
I'm polling them right away. I don't want to keep Peter waiting.
Okay.
I want to look professional. I don't think I've actually ever talked with Peter. You guys have literally never spoken? DM'd and stuff, but yeah, I don't think we've ever met and talked or anything.
Huh. It would surprise me, but maybe you're right. I just have to say that I apologize because of the weird angle the camera's at. My second screen with all the chat is literally over there. So if you see me looking at that direction, that's what I'm doing. I'm not ignoring Mark and Trunks.
Don't worry, I'm always playing with my cat, so I don't think anyone is gonna be like, "Oh my god, how rude Peter is."
Oh, one thing that got announced today. that I forgot about because I didn't get an email ahead of it putting me under embargo. And so clearly it wasn't big enough information that Riot felt like they should do that. But the finals are going to take place at the theater here in LA.
That was in the announcement, wasn't it? It's on Reddit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's cool.
I'm saying I had almost forgotten when we were listing off things that got announced recently. The mid-season showdown actually having a live finals, not that people can. There's no audience, but at the Greek Theater here in Los Angeles, I think is that's cool. Yeah. They're going to do it across Saturday and Sunday for, I guess, the 2 days.
I mean, it's super cool. Like the emerging regions kind of showed up, I think, the major regions last year now, because Brazil had their finals on like a massive skyscraper in the middle of Sao Paulo with like isolated blocks on top of like some insane building with helicopters filming it. And I think the Russian finals, they had like a pirates cave set up. I can't remember the exact thing, but that was pretty awesome too. So now we get like spectacle in North America. It's great.
I'm almost positive that was that summer or spring? Because I remember people were memeing the shit out of the LCS during that time for like getting outproduced by CB LOL. Because the Jin shot thing, one of their things had that insane Jin shot too, where there's like the guy on stage doing the snipes. I think that was CB LOL. I don't know. There was a lot of cool stuff last year.
Yeah, Brazil always has insane shows. Like the finals in Brazil always have the most ridiculous openings. So.
Well, either way, I'm excited for it. I mean, this will be, to my knowledge, the first time that we have players sitting on a stage for over a year now. So I think that's really exciting. And I also, I'm really curious. I hope Riot is able to do something really cool. Presumably, not having an arena full of fans creates some sadness. It's like, okay, well, you can't get the cheers and all that stuff, but maybe you can do some really cool visuals. You can do some neat sort of takeover of that area of the theater and show some cool stuff.
The Gappies, just fill the arena with
virtual versions of Sherman. Yeah, I think it'll be great. Anyway, I think that's going to be it's just exciting to see that. Yeah, should we bring in our first caller?
Sure. I guess I will spam Discord in Twitch chat for people who have never seen this before. It's a live call and show. You can go ahead, click the Discord link. When you get there, go join the Pleb Calls or Pleb Calls 2 voice channel. Put your takes and your topics up in the Pleb Topics text channel. If I like it, I'll pull you into the waiting room. We'll hang out. We'll do a quick audio check when it's your turn, and then we'll pull you into the on-air room.
And if you are a sub, thank you, first off, for being a sub. Be sure to sync your Discord and your Twitch chat so that you can get access to the Subtopics channel, which moves a little slower and does give you, a bit of a decent chance of getting into the call. While we're waiting on Mark to come back, which, by the way, I need to pull up this so that I can see. Okay. While we're waiting on Mark to come back, some sub shoutouts. Thank you to Ventus Official, Bomber X, Pilgrim Panda, Flick Nickum, I Love You Chat, Iron Scrub Vaults, and Spencer Neutron. Squirtle Squad is here. Squirtle Squad, welcome back to the show. You've been on before, yes?
No, I'm another guy named Squirtle Squad, right?
There's a different Squirtle Squad.
I mean, it's the Squirtle Squad, dude.
Yeah,
it's just one of the squad. Come on,
Travis.
Travis.
Okay. Sorry, I thought that previously the caller had been the entire squad. I did not realize this was an individual Squirtle from the squad. Where are you calling from?
Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So Mark and Travis and Peter, if you haven't chosen your MVP is Alphari, my boy Barney Morris. I think it's hard to see Liquid succeed without Alphari just from the eye test. I think the biggest thing that he does is he just gets ahead, either with Santorn or not, and then moves around the map to help the team. I have stats actually to back it up. I took the 5 minutes to actually research just on stats. So for him, he has the highest goal difference at 15. It's 905 gold. The next closest is Huni at 209. He has high CSD at 15 and 16. The next highest impact at 6. He has the highest solo kills at 9. He has high solo kills. He has basically the highest KP, 68%, second highest to impact, who's also, a good player too. And he has also the highest KDA for top laners in the league. Contrast that to Blabber, who's like the jungler that's kind of in the running. His CSD at 15 is tied with Santorin. His goal difference at 15 is 442 versus 381 of Santorin, so pretty even there. His KP is second, which is it's close to Closer, who has 76%. And basically the best thing that Blabber dominates in is XP difference at 15 and first blood percentage, but he's also second highest in KDA to Santorin. So I think Alphari just hands down has the best stats in the league. He's the best top laner in the league, and he definitely deserves your MVP votes.
MVP votes? What? Well, you made an argument for all pro top laner, right? If you're saying that he's like the best top laner, but I don't know. Oh, I guess you mentioned the other stats as well. It's harder, I feel like, when you're comparing across that stuff. Mark, what do you think?
I mean, I think it sounds like from what I heard in the community and stuff that the two main candidates that people are discussing are Blabber and Alphari. I think both them, like, I haven't dug in and done my full research, but my initial leaning is towards Blabber. I think his dominance over the rest of the jungle position for most of the split was pretty incredible. Alphari has obviously been incredible in the top lane as well, but I felt like I saw Blabber just take over games pretty consistently, and have a larger effect on the games that C9 was winning. I think Alphari is incredible. Obviously, he's the best top lane in the league. He'll be my all-pro vote, almost hands down, to all those stats that you referenced. But I'm going to eventually go back through and look at some of the wins and losses and be like, exactly how much are they doing in each of them. And I feel like sometimes it's not even necessarily Alphari's fault. I felt like sometimes this team was not playing around him perfectly, or like messing up some of the stuff. Like that game where they absolutely slammed Impact, for example, through like ganks in the top lane, and then like 0-4 Impact ends up being better. It's like, who was calling for them to dive Impact the 5th time at like the inner turret when Dragon is up, and like some of those kinds of calls, which is like, that's not really Alphari's fault, and I'm not going to hold that against him, but like, there's a number of those kinds of plays where I'm a little up, like, God damn it, Team Liquid. So I don't know. I'd have to relook at some of the losses and some of those wins and kind of reevaluate him, because right now my early votes for Blabber.
I mean, I've got a simple question, which is how many top laners get as many support rooms as Alphari gets? I mean, it's absurd, right? Like, I mean, if you were asking me who's MVP, I think Alphari isn't even the number one candidate on his team. I think it's Core. Like, I mean, Core. You just look at the recent game we played against them. Who's the person who's top lane blowing Jizuka's flash? It's cool. He's there at 7 minutes. He's there blowing the flash. Who's the person who's roaming top? The first time we go and play Team Liquid, it's CoreJJ. He's the one who's helping them dive Impact all those times. So I mean, for me, it's like, I mean, I normally err towards giving the award to somebody who's on the best team, who's Blabber. And if you're asking me who's the one who's giving Alphari his leads, it's CoreJJ in the harder matchups. No, not in the matchups where he's just killing people 1v1, but in the matchups where top lane is unfavorable or going even. I will also say that he gets the most counter pick of any top laner in the league, I think, except maybe Revenge. I think Revenge will make it more. So that should factor into it.
Yeah, I think like even like, for example, just because it's fresh in my memory, the game where he Gnar into it was GP into the Gnar, right? The 100 Thieves game that just happened.
Yeah.
Santorin went up there and they had a ton of free, easy dives as well to help snowball him. And like, I don't want to. It's one of those things like, I don't know who's calling for it. Like, is Alphari just setting up the waves perfectly and being like, hey, Santorin, after you finish, you're clear. This is going to crash at the perfect time. Just swing behind. And like, hey, CoreJJ, if you can get out of the lane, yada, yada, yada. So I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm with you on Blabber's going to be my vote. The who on Team Liquid should get the MVP votes, though, is an interesting discussion, because I feel like everyone has kind of defaulted to Alphari because of, I think, some of the lane leads that he gets, whether or not that's all him or those roams that you're talking about.
Yeah, but I mean, the interesting thing is, like, everyone is saying Tactical is having an awful split. That's up for debate whether that's true or not. But if Tactical is having an awful split and your bot lane is always ahead, I mean, there's only one possible conclusion, right? So either Tactical's not having an awful split, or Core is just that good.
Yeah, You can lead a horse to water, but
Sketch2622 in chat says, "Is there a reason only Emily has mentioned PoE?" And then later accused Twitch chat or the analyst desk of hating TSM.
So I was about to bring that up to Peter. Is like, do you think there's a MVP candidate on TSM? Because we were talking about this on the dive today and trying to be like, is it Sword Art or PoE of the TSM players? Because even if you're not saying, this is my actual main MVP vote, you have 3 votes, right? You do first, second, third. And so assuming you're not doing 2 on one team, it sounds like we're both Blabber and then maybe a Team Liquid player. And then you probably are voting for a TSM player. So who would you, or I threw out even FBI or something for 100 Thieves. Impact could be one. What do you think about a TSM MVP candidate? And then who would it be if you're going to do it?
So the interesting thing on this is, it's often hard to see how a team plays, right? But PoE teams always tend to play in a similar way. And Sword Art teams, well, not all Sword Art teams, but some Sword Art teams, especially Suning, seem to play in this particular way, right? And the question is, do TSM play more like a Sword Art team or more like a PoE team? And in my opinion, they play more like a Sword Art team, right? I mean, they don't play. This is not a TSM that play like FlyQuest played last year. It's not a team that plays like. I mean, is it fair to bring up old CLG? I mean, they were pretty good, right, when PoE was on CLG.
Yeah, they made third and almost made Worlds.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were good, not like world class exactly, but they were good.
Yeah, but I mean, their map setups were a particular way, right? And those are kind of what I call PoE map setups, team map setups, and now they play like a Sword Art team. So, I mean, PoE looks individually more impressive. I don't know whether it's a coaching staff thing. I don't know whether it's an individual shot calling thing. I don't know who's leading review. But from the outside, it looks like Sword Art is turning TSM into I'm going to say a super controversial opinion here, but turning TSM into a worse version of Suning compared to last year.
I can't tell if it's a compliment or not.
And yeah, I mean, I think he deserves credit for it.
It's interesting too because Sword Art got super flamed through the first week, somewhat justifiably for really struggling in those first couple games. He had a lot of mechanical errors and their dives looked terrible and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the things that, when you talk about the style that they've taken on, there are a lot of roams out of Sword Art. Lost is, they're not playing through bot lane. He's roaming quite a bit. But it's hard for me to overlook some of those early games from Sword Art to because when I vote MVP, I'm usually less this is the most important player for their team, and I try and be like, what did this guy do over the course of all 18 games, kind of thing. Yeah.
And I agree with you. Individual performance matters. I mean, I wouldn't flame anyone for putting Alphari as their number one choice, right? Alphari has looked individually insanely impressive, right? That's not mince words here.
Yeah.
But it's just when I'm looking for an MVP, generally I know these players from a long way back, unless it's a new rookie. And kind of I've seen how the roles that they played in the same team and how teams have played around them. And it's just interesting seeing how some teams, how this TSM has chosen not to play like a typical PoE team. I mean, maybe they'll change in playoffs, who knows?
Squirtle, I mean, what do you think of all this? Because it feels like you were it seemed as though you thought Alphari was the for sure candidate, but it seems like our lineup is unconvinced, and Mark even going so far as to basically say he's looking at Blabber as his.
Yeah, I mean, I think stats are one thing, but I think MVP is more also a visual thing of what people see. I think I agree with Peter. I mean, CoreJJ is actually insane. So
you
the
just
fact
want a
that
TL
still
number.
2v2 killing. I mean, honestly, I'm a big TL fan, but the fact that Team Liquid is still winning bot lane 2v2s that Peter pointed out, even though Tactical is low key running it down, I think shows how good Core is. So I think that'll maybe hurt Alphari if he splits votes with Core or in general. But yeah, I don't know. I'm fine with either TL player getting. I think TL has the best roster, and they're probably gonna just throw the whole mid-season showdown coming up. So
why should Blabber not get it?
Well, I mean, I think the only thing I can say is stats wise, it's pretty similar to other junglers in the league. That was what I was looking for to see why not Blabber. But I do agree, Blabber does take over games, so he's really good. So I don't know.
Pretty good.
I mean, I will push back a little bit on the Blabber stats are close to other junglers. he has 3.1 kills and assists at 15 on average in a game. The next closest is Santorin at 2.2. And this is like, you heard a lot of junglers complaining that this is support diff meta. And like, oh, it's a lot of power farming. You know, for a while they were like, just got full clear and do objectives. Like a lot of people were talking about stuff like that. But Blabber was still and is still an absolute monster in the early game and finding kills. His ganks are really efficient. He will just fuck up the other jungler as hard as he can whenever he sees the opportunity to. Like, I think he is an absolute monster.
Well, Squirtle Squad, anything you want to say before we move on to the next caller?
No, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a good one. All right. Off Mark goes to find our next friend. Thank you to Spencer Neutron for 3 years. Jaffe58 for the 1 year. Avura for 23 months. Chavoul, Quiblo, Le Creuset for a year. And Peter Exponer. Thank you. We got Rohulio here. Am I saying that right?
Roholio. Just Roho is fine.
Rojo. Okay. I tried to pronounce it with like an accent and get fancy and all right. So Rojo, where are you calling from?
Red Oak, Texas.
Red Oak, Texas. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I want to talk about the idea of player development kind of being a symptom of a problem rather than the problem itself. So I think that staffing and coaching development should be the main focus of teams rather than just player development, because you have to have someone to develop the player before the player can be developed.
Gotcha. Do you find all the current coaching staff in the LCS to be disappointing?
No, not at all. I just think that it's kind of unfair for some coaches, like Bjergsen, who if given time maybe would be an incredible coach, but he's just kind of thrown into the head coach position. Or like another example would be Mithy, who stepped down from a head coaching position.
Well, so Mithy intentionally, like I did an interview with him earlier this year, he intentionally stepped down from the head coach position because he decided he wasn't. It seemed as though he felt like he wasn't ready for that kind of like on his shoulders again. So I don't know if that helps your point or if you think
I think that if he was given the time under another coach or given time as support rather than as the head coach, he would be a great coach now, and he would probably feel more confident in the head coaching position.
Gotcha. So maybe the idea is that we're rushing people into head coaching roles. You would argue perhaps that Moon or Galen for CLG, similar situation. Like maybe he helped a little bit with the academy team, but we're putting a lot of people, perhaps players, into head coaching roles. Do you feel like we're doing it too quickly?
Yes.
Okay. The only question I have for you is like, then do you feel like there's a lot of other candidates that are ready for that head coaching role? Like who, because you obviously, like on TSM, you have to have somebody else in that role before Bjergsen gets there. So would you just have like, I don't know, Parth there?
I mean, that's obviously a difficult question. And I guess my take is very like long-term focused rather than just, hey, just solve the problem now and just clip it and ship it. But yeah, I actually don't know how you'd solve the short term.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, so generally, just summing up the whole thing, the head coach role, we have too many people that aren't ready for it yet, and we need to give some of these folks more time to develop before they're in that head coaching role, and that's one of the things that is slowing the development of NA.
And across not just the head coaching, but just in general, being really intentional about making coaches rather than kind of shifting them into the coaching position.
Gotcha. Okay, well, Peter, let's throw it to you because you've obviously coached for some time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I had to check myself just before I was going to say this because I think of my response, because I was going to say Asian teams, but that's actually not technically true. Some Asian teams kind of divide this between two roles, right? They have like a head coach and they have like a strategic coach, right? And the strategic coach is the guy who goes on stage. He's the guy who does the draft. He's the guy who leads review. And the head coach, it's not like the head coach has no power at all in review. He will help individual people, but the head coach's role is kind of to be a generalist, and he has to have game knowledge, and he has to, to understand how to moderate discussion and all of this. But what he's there for is to enable the guy who's the strategic coach. Right? And the strategic coach is there, and he can have more specialized knowledge. Right? Like it's possible that as a strategic coach, you're like 10 out of 10 in one or two areas, but it doesn't matter if you're 4 in other areas because the head coach is going to be there covering for you, right? And I think as we see more sort of sophisticated coaching setups happen, we talk about kind of how a team works together on stage, how you need to balance a team. You have a high resource player, so you need a weak side player, right? And I think you're going to see that in coaching staff as well, right? Like we talk about how to balance a playing an on-stage roster, but you also need to balance how your coaching staff works. You can't just have all these people who are specialists in communication and conflict resolution and nobody who has in-game knowledge. Same token, you can't have everyone who's a specialist on in-game knowledge as well, right? You need to have a balance. And sometimes if you have only people who are specialists on in-game knowledge, you don't have, somebody has to go out in a role that's not the most convenient for them, right? Because they have to fill another type of role. So I think as coaching and development goes on and develops, you're going to see more kind of sophisticated approaches. From my approach, I think I think like you can't expect there to be insane talent development, especially with young players, unless you invest in your academy coaches. I mean, it's just common sense, right? Like academy matters more than LCS, because in LCS you have veterans who can take over a lot of that coaching responsibility for the newer players. But who's going to do that in academy? I mean, you need a coach, right?
I think to that point, though, about the different roles that coaches can have, because the callers sound like, you need to invest in a coach who's going to teach the younger players, whereas I don't think that's necessary for improvement. Obviously, it's great if you have some ex-pro who's going to be able to, like a Reignover, like lead these guys, or a Westrice who seem really important for C9's development. But I think having just a really good environment for these players to play in, and making sure that you have someone who has conflict resolution skills, like you're saying, that can, when the players start butting heads on how to approach the game and what they should be doing, and this kind of stuff, having someone who can guide that discussion so it doesn't evolve in the way that, like Lena was sharing a story on the subreddit about, Hanser and Reggie playing a 1v1 if Hanser should play more Gragas and solo queue, like having systems and roles in place. Like, you don't necessarily need someone to tell you how to play Gragas as much as sometimes you just need someone who can get the team moving in the right direction. And so, to the caller's point, like, yeah, you should invest in your coaches who can guide that development just as much as you should find someone who can actually give you the right answers to game-related questions as well. And sometimes it takes longer, it feels like, to find people who I guess there's more people who can fill the conflict resolution role from outside the league ecosystem, or who can bring that experience who also play league, versus like you need specifically a really high level player who also understands 5v5 competitive, or maybe they're specialized in a single lane or whatever. But I feel like that knowledge is maybe a little bit harder to find.
Peter, go ahead.
No, sorry, but I agree. But also, it's worth saying that if you are somebody who's had a successful playing career, you should naturally have an advantage over somebody who's just coming in fresh. But there are a lot of like players who, even you look at conventional sports, you look at soccer, you have players who were star players in their time, who knew what they wanted from their teams, who could give their teams an identity. Somebody like Johan Cruyff in football, and who turned out to be very good coaches as a result, right? But at the same time, you also have players, people like Mourinho, who don't really have that kind of a high level playing background. So I mean, you can get these kind of things from all areas. So I mean, I think we have to be careful going too far in saying people outside of the game are the people where you need those soft skills from, but you can get people inside the game too.
Going back to the caller's take, though, which is about development of coaches. I mean, Peter or Mark, Mark, you were in a coaching role previously. How does an org develop its coaches, and are the LCS orgs doing enough to develop them?
I mean, I can say what I did back in the day, and I mean, I don't think I was fucking reinventing the wheel or anything. But I was always looking for people to hire, and I know it's a pretty scummy tactic that people hate about, hiring people on the cheap and being like, "Hey, show me some portfolio, do maybe a little bit of volunteer work." But we didn't have a ton of resources at the time. Not like my salary was that big back then. And so, I had a team of people who I would give projects to and see who impressed me, and I would work with and mentor in some capacity, like on what I wanted to see different and done, and share how I was approaching the game and trying to fix problems and that kind of stuff. And some of those people are still like in the scene, like not like I made their career. I'm just saying like I think the first person to hire them, like TK, who is still with Team Liquid. David Lim was a basketball coach before we hired him, and I forget, he's in Europe now, I think. I don't know. He's coached for a long time now, though. So like, I don't think I did anything that crazy, but I think to develop coaches, you just have to hire them, work with them the same way you do it with players, and give feedback on what they're doing right and wrong. Listen to the players, ask your players what they think of this person. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's some insane regimen that you have to do.
Yeah. I agree with you, but I think if you're a head coach, I think head coaches often, so one of the most important person on your staff is your academy head coach. If you're like a head coach of an LCS team, the guy who's leading your academy team, they better have like you better invest time in them, because if they're not doing a good job, then how's your talent development pipeline coming out? How do you know that they're even being taught to play the game in the same way, right? Like I think it's really important that you spend time investing in those people. And I mean, for me, like when I joined Splice in 2018, right, we interviewed 96 people. Thankfully for EG, we only interviewed 22 people. But like I literally interviewed every single person who gave me a cold message on Twitter, like every single person. And I wouldn't say that Duke and Mac, who were the two people we ended up hiring to be like strategic and assistant coach, were the two best. But they were the two people who showed that they had a clear plan for improvement, and like who were just academically smart, like had a good plan were self-disciplined, were like they realized what their flaws were, and they had a good plan for how they were going to continue to improve, right? And obviously they're both now head coaches in LEC and doing a really good job. So I'm glad with those guys. But for EG, I mean, from my perspective, like there's a lot of work EG does into collegiate, and there's a lot of time that I spend talking to collegiate coaches. And I'm just going to tell you that, sure, some of it is because I want to help other people in the scene, but it's also selfish, right? Like I want to see who the next great coaches are and to get them before anyone else does. So I think it's possible. I think you have to develop people, and I don't think it's a case of just finding somebody who's a good player and developing them. Although it can be that is one approach you can be, because if you've been a good player, you can demonstrate that you understand the game, right? Which means that you're at least not going to do harm in that.
Peter and Mark, just final question on this for the caller's take: are LCS orgs not doing enough to develop their coaching staff?
I mean, I've been out the game long enough that I don't fucking really know what teams are specifically doing behind the scenes. I mean, I talk to some coaches, but usually when you talk about, as a broadcast analyst, usually when you talk to a team about what they're up to and this kind of stuff, it's more about LCS stage and how are the players and this kind of stuff. You rarely ask, like, what are your initiatives for leveling up your coaching staff? I feel like, we talk to Papa about that kind of stuff, I guess, but...
I mean, from my perspective, like I spoke to, like I said, I interviewed 22 people for the kind of the role that Turtle has on our coaching staff now, and I asked them like, what can an org do to help you become the best version of yourself, right? Because we spent a lot of the interview talking about how you would develop players. So one of the questions I like to ask is how can we as an org develop you? And like 20 of those people had never had the org do anything for them. And my follow-up question was like, well, I mean, you've worked with a head coach, no? So what did they do for you? And he was like, oh, he said hello to me and talked with me over lunch like 1 or 2 days a week. And I mean, maybe I just interviewed the wrong people. My default answer to this is, from what I've seen so far, the answer is no, right? Like, I mean, people are just not investing enough in developing their stuff. And I don't necessarily mean money. I mean like time, right?
Yeah.
But bear in mind that I've talked to a small sample of people. Many of those people didn't have teams, right? So maybe it was maybe it was just the wrong sample of people. But obviously, like I can just say from EG's perspective, that's incredibly important. Like when I was interviewing with EG, I said that this is the, here's my how we're going to develop players and how we're going to scout and develop players, but here's how we're going to scout and develop coaching staff, and you must have both. You can't have one. It's not going to work if you only do it one way. So that's my answer.
I'm going to go with no. LCS teams are not doing enough, especially based off what Peter said. And like Kelsey's in the chat, she says that a lot of times academy, like the coaching staff is fairly fractured, where it's like academy is just told to just go and do stuff. I don't hear too often about like, hey, we went to like this coaching seminar, or we, this team really did a lot to like help make me a better coach. I just don't ever hear that stuff. So I'm not saying, I'm sure some orgs do a better job of it than others, but I would bet a lot of them are just like, all right, we hired this coach, make our team better. And by the way, that's not to say that I bet you a lot of other regions have the same issue, right? Like it's a very immature sport, so I don't think that we're at a place yet where we can be good about this. But I think it's definitely true that we're probably not doing much to develop our coaches. Rojo, thank you. I just want to add something. I agree with everything Travis said, but also it's worth saying that in Europe they have natural selection, right? They have EU Masters, and they have like how many 80, amateur level, academy level teams where you can prove yourself as a coach, right? Whereas in North America we don't have that. So where's your talent pipeline for coaches coming from, right? So it's not as much of a problem in Europe as it is in North America, for instance, because you can just say, look at all these teams that I coached, look at all the success I found in the Dutch league, the Spanish league, or something like this, and this is what I can add for you. Whereas if you're bringing in somebody new in North America, they don't have that background. Like there's just not those opportunities. So.
Even on that point, like the best thing you have is kind of what we were saying with the academy system. But even then, your goal with the academy system is more player development than necessarily like winning, you could say, and so. These coaches in the EU Masters region and stuff can be like, well, I got my team to the finals of our regional league, which is maybe a better thing than how would someone measure CLG Academy this split, from the outside? I think it's a lot harder if your goal is not, I mean, obviously you want to win, but it's a very different system than the regional leagues, it feels like, in terms of what the end goal is.
Well, caller, Rojo.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to throw in here really quickly before I give you your
No, I mean, I know this obviously ended up being kind of was just a cold take anyway, but yeah, I mean, I thank you for kind of making the point a little better than I phrased it. But yeah, I just really want to see more intentionally making coaches great, and I think that, as you guys noted, it doesn't seem as though there is that, but I'd love to see it.
Thank you so much, Rojo. Any shout outs you want to make?
Shout out to Peter Dunn. Good luck in playoffs.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you so much, Rojo. I appreciate it. I'll catch you next time. Mark, I was told by Sherman that it's not called playoffs. It's called mid-season showdown. Are we not calling it playoffs at all? Because it's like it feels like it is a playoff situation, right?
Yeah, it's a bracket. People get knocked out, and they're out until the regular season commences. Sounds like a playoff to me. I understand it's not called spring split playoffs. It's called mid-season showdown. I expect you will still hear people colloquially, whatever the fuck,
I'm going to call them playoffs because I'm so tired of calling it. I don't want to call it
the MSS.
Yeah. Maybe MSS is okay.
Playoffs.
Yeah.
Plus, you get all like the memes with playoffs and stuff.
Let's take a quick break to talk about Alienware, our sponsor for the show. Really appreciate Alienware sponsoring so much of what we do here. And I know some of you might have seen this already in my outros, but hey, if you are in Canada, you can now save 10% off. The code for years and years and years has only worked here in the US. And I'm like, well, hey, I cover NA. So I went to Alienware and we figured it out. It is like a different part of Alienware, so it took a little bit. I apologize for the delay. But you can now use Travis 10 off if you are in the great expanse to the north of us. I don't know. There's a bunch of nicknames for Canada. I don't remember all of them at the moment. You can save 10% off your order. Yeah, Tim in the chat, who's Canadian, who's on Run It every week, which is sponsored by Alienware, who does run it every week. He can now actually use the code to save 10%. Congratulations, Tim. You can now finally get the product at a discount that you've been promoting doing that show. Anyway, thank you so much to Alienware for Twitch chat talking about my hair right now for some reason. Thank you so much to Alienware for sponsoring the show and so much of what we do here. I really appreciate that, and congratulations to our Canadians on now having the opportunity to type my name into a discount form when you're checking out with your Alienware product. Thank you. Okay, Mark is off to grab the next caller. Let's see. We got some subs, which I appreciated. Olive Loaf, Martin 101, Jack Dur 53, Justin the Fresh, Chief, I don't know how to say your name, but appreciate it. Fisham Olsen and Tice. I think a couple more people. We have C9 Blaine here, our next caller. Blaine, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from North Vernon, Indiana.
Indiana. Well, what do you want to talk about on the show?
My take is TL will not make finals, and not only that, I think TSM will knock them into the losers bracket and then knock them out of that bracket as well.
Oh, okay. So give me the order of operations here. What's the path?
All right. So given the schedule that we've all seen that's going to happen next weekend,
yes,
TSM is going to beat TL just because of the NA circle of suck.
Okay. Because they have the head-to-head, right?
Yeah,
right.
2 up.
Yeah.
So, like, TL beats C9, but TSM beats TL.
Okay.
So, just giving on stats here.
TSM is the Squirtle to TL's Charmander.
Right.
Why the fuck did you call the water team Charmander?
So, anyway.
All right, so.
Continue.
What I think is basically going to happen is TSM will win that head-to-head. Cloud9 will beat Hunter Thieves. I would hope so. And then that would bring them down to the losers bracket.
Yeah.
TL.
Who does TL play, Mark, in the losers bracket? Is it Dig?
I'd have to look at that bracket.
It's us.
Is you as EG? Okay.
Okay.
The website doesn't do a great job of showing it, but sorry, continue.
I'm not sure how that would go, but
So you assume TL beats whoever they face, which is presumably EG based off what Peter's saying.
no, because if that happened, Cloud9 would face TSM, which Cloud9 I think has a 1-to-1 head-to-head, right?
Right. But TL has to, in order for TL to face TSM again, they have to beat whoever they face.
Right, which would be EG.
Yes.
Which
okay.
again, I said I'm not sure how that might play out.
Okay.
But if they did face up again in the lower bracket, I think TSM would just knock them down again.
Okay.
Because I won't say that TL's not C9's kryptonite, but if C9 never faces them, they won't have to deal with it. Right?
We're deep into bracketology.
Yes, bracketology.
I like this caller because our record in regular season is 1-1 versus every other playoff team except Dig. So that means that we have a 1 in 16 chance if we just run the gauntlet.
You just coin flip the regular season matchup. There you go.
We just coin flip every single round. I like this.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear y'all's take on it.
Well, so I thought, no offense, caller, but when I thought we pulled you, I thought you were going to have some like, well, TSM does this real good, and I think Jensen's been bad this split, so there's a mismatch or something. I thought you were going to give me some in-game stuff to dig into, but you kind of just went like, here were their heads-to-heads this split, and the playoffs will play out exactly the same.
Well,
like,
I mean, if you look at their games together, though, it's kind of.
Do you feel like TSM naturally counters TL besides the record? Caller?
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
They're 2-0 against them, and it was.
I know you keep referencing the record.
I know. I won't say it wasn't close, but like, I think if they went to a best of fives and TSM was able to put together at least the 2-0, I think they could pull out that last one.
Okay. What about the matchup besides the record? Do you think means that TL is weaker? Like, do you think, for instance, that Huni has Alfari's number, or do you think?
No.
Okay. Do you think? So what about that? What about that matchup?
I think top and jungle would be pretty shaky for the TSM side, but I think other than that, it would be pretty good for TSM.
Okay, so you think TSM has bot and mid, and that's where they're going to come through?
Right.
Okay. Mark, you okay over there?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
Okay. So, let's set aside the record, because it's if we only use the record, then this is an infallible argument. You know, it's like, well, yeah, that's how it played out previously. So, Mark and Peter, I don't know which one of you wants to go first. Will TL lose to TS? I mean, it's a decent argument, right? Like, if TSM is stronger, then they can just bring them out twice. And I know, Peter, that might have some unfortunate conclusions for you or implications, but curious what you both think.
Should I go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's switch it up. You go first.
I mean, if you believe that PoE is going to be Jensen, and you believe that Lost and Sword Art are going to be Tactical and Core JJ, which is something that you can believe as an individual, and I can see the arguments for it, depending on what stats you want to focus on and what kind of aspects of the game, then this is possible that it can happen. That's what I said. Right? I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that I or Mark or Travis would agree, but I mean, we all know how important core is to TL, right? So if you believe that, TSM are going to stomp them so hard bot that core isn't going to be relevant, then it can happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about this a lot in the dive today, and I did predict TL there, but it was actually hard for me. Just because TL's mid to late has been kind of shaky with some of the tactical decisions, with the way he's jumped in and died quite a few times, and so I don't think TSM. I mean, there was the Dignitas game where they had that huge blunder, but I feel like they usually don't make huge blunders in the mid to late game, and a lot of their comps are more scaling focused, and so I don't think it's. I'm still going to predict TL, probably. But I can see where TSM wins, and it's probably not lane. Like, I don't think PoE slams Jensen. I don't really think Sword Art and Lost suddenly turn to 2v2 monsters and slam core and tactical. But I think TL's early game, which is the best in the league statistically, and I think if you just look at how they move around the map and stuff, is pretty good, will probably get leads versus TSM over the course of the series. But if they don't shore up their pretty bad decision making sometimes, just individual mistakes, then I can see a world where TSM comes back. TSM usually punishes people if they have bad Baron setups. They did it all split long to teams. If a team went for a somewhat risky Baron, it actually usually ended up in TSM's pocket. I see Peter raising his hand. You want to interject?
No,
Go ahead.
I mean, I agree with you. I couldn't think of a team that had bad Baron setups.
Oh yeah. Oh, I wasn't going to name anyone.
That's good.
But yeah, I think that's probably the way that I see TSM winning the series if it does happen. But I'm going to generally lean towards the team that I think has better early game. We've seen a higher peak out of TL, already through lock-in and stuff like that. And I think they just have generally better players in most positions, which is why I'm going TL.
All right. Well, I don't I don't know, Blaine, if you have a counter for Mark there, or if you want to break down why he's wrong.
I really can't. I really don't have one.
It's okay. I appreciate it. Is there anything you want to say before you go on to the next caller?
No. Shout out Travis and the boys, Alienware, and Game Fuel.
Thank you so much for the call, and thank you for the shout outs. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
Have a good one.
You too.
I love that guy, man. he shows up with his take, and that's all he's going to talk about. And if you try and redirect it, he's like, no, 2-0, that's it.
Yeah.
I also like Peter's version of soft flame. You know, he's like, if there's a world where you think this is going to happen, then you know that's your prerogative to think that way, and maybe that'll happen.
I think it could happen.
Yeah. Okay. Mark is off to grab the next person. Thank you to CR Simba, OPTSM fan for gifting a sub to Tim, OPTSM fan for gifting a sub to Command Attack, and Little Sleepy for the Prime. Peter, have you always wanted to coach in North America?
Yeah, I wanted to coach in every major region. So I've collected almost all of them now. Just have to try to coach in Korea one day. Pretty hard for a foreigner though to coach in Korea.
Not easy. The last one who tried, things did not go well for him, unfortunately.
No, it wasn't too bad, no, because Sandbox started pretty poorly.
No, I wasn't talking about him. I was talking about this past offseason. Hash is here. Hash, where are you calling from?
Leesburg, Virginia. Shout out to my boy Steve.
Your boy Steve. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So, basically, C9 will get to finals, but the caveat being like the way to get there is gonna be a little more unconventional. Yeah.
Okay. So how unconventional in what way?
After winning against 100 Thieves, they will end up losing against TL. So I'm already saying that TL is going to win against TSM, and then they're going to climb their way back up to finals.
Okay. So you think that do you think they win or lose against TL again in the finals?
I'd say it'll be a rather close match, considering now they have an idea of TL after losing against them. But I think it's gonna be a close match. But I do think C9 will probably take it.
Okay, so they lose the first time, and then they rematch in the finals.
Yep.
Okay.
Basically.
Why do you think they lose to TL in the first situation?
Well, so of course, as we saw in like the regular season, it's pretty much clear that there's still some growing pains that C9 has been experiencing. Of course, with IMT, most recently, they basically just gave away the Baron when they should have they're clearly just committed to it, and they just run away as soon as Nocturne ulted into it, and they just walked out instead of just committing to it. Even though they kind of inherently won the fight overall, it's still something that they should have just stuck their guns to, and you can see a lot. And their games haven't been really even if they're winning, their games hasn't been really convincing, to say the least.
Gotcha. Well, Mark, you want to start off on this one?
I mean, I don't know if I want to get into the weeds of they win this time, but then lose this time and then win again.
Well, I assume you have them against 100T.
Yeah, I have them pretty heavily against 100 Thieves. I think that they're probably the favorite for me through playoffs right now. I don't worry too much about some of the losses that they suffered in the regular season. I think they were experimenting quite a bit with their drafts with the 5 range comp and stuff like that, which are pretty difficult to pull off. And I think that their individual levels haven't dropped. A lot of that stuff was like, oh, you didn't black shield the right person this one time, or you didn't force them through the traps of Caitlyn and Victor Gravity Field and stuff. Like those kinds of mistakes I think are a lot more champ specific than just like player inting. Like I feel like I've seen tactical misposition a bunch, for example, of a player that I think isn't necessarily playing great right now. So like I don't think C9 I'm too worried about. Meta still feels like it suits them pretty well. I think that they have great players in every single position. The one that you would point to would be Fudge as like he's a liability. But I think they've done a lot better job of integrating him. They can put him on weak side if they need to. And so when you go up against TL, presumably in the semifinals, to the caller's point, we'll have to see what happens, because I feel like that is kind of the biggest question mark still. But that aside, I think they match up pretty well versus everyone, pound for pound in the playoffs.
I mean, I would guess that you would think, Mark, that they win that TL match? Because you have TL beating TSM. You said that you think C9 is probably the favorite for the not the playoffs.
That's a couple weeks away. Let's not talk about that. Let's watch a best of 5 before we get there.
Okay. Peter.
I'm just sitting here listening, really puzzled because I don't understand how they're going to get to play TL again when EG will just beat them in the lower bracket. But I guess in a world where we have internet issues, yeah, sure.
Your facility catches on fire, or there's a fire alarm going off, and you have to run across the street.
Peter, do you think C9 is the strongest team right now?
I think it's the way that NA works this year. It's very, very matchup dependent. Like I think certain teams have advantages against certain other teams. I don't think it's always the teams that have won 2-0. But I think that there are some teams in the league that cannot beat C9 in a best of 5. It's not possible.
Why do you think that NA is so matchup dependent this year?
Because I think that teams haven't had enough time to adapt because there's 3 competitive games a week, right? And the season's only 6 weeks long. Lock-in doesn't count, right? Like people may say lock-in counts, but I mean, most of the teams didn't have their full rosters. People are still adapting. People are still bringing coaching staff, playing staff. It takes a lot of time, right? And that means that it's really hard to add a lot of sophistication and different styles into your play. So it becomes a lot about matchup dependence and how much it allows you to adapt. I think the system gives Dignitas and EG a massive advantage going into playoffs. I'm not going to say Dig or EG will go to MSI, but we'll go to MSI. But what I will say is that the teams that are playing this weekend have like 4 days of scrims. We have 13 days. We can like boot camp. We can prepare cheese. If I want to play Nico with Renekton, I can play Nico with Renekton again. I can play Nico with Vayne if I want. We can come up with all the cheese. And that kind of thing will help us in going forward, right? Where it's imagine you go and play in the upper bracket tournament, you lose in the upper bracket tournament, you only have 3 to 4 more days to get your shit together against a team that has 13 days of scrims. They have 9 more days on you. What do you like? It's going to be really hard, and they will have watched you for an entire best of 5. It's not necessarily that easy.
That's what I was going to bring
apologies for the loud noise just everyone heard, by the way. It was like one of my stream alerts for some reason. Yeah,
that's my apologies. I had my phone in front. My bad.
No, that wasn't you. For some reason, I had a stream alert that wasn't muted, and somebody, I don't know how that happened because I don't even see. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah,
I was sorry.
No, that's it.
Yeah, I was agreeing that like the whole scouting angle too of getting to watch them play their best of 5 while you just spend the first week training general stuff, whether it's exploring comps or working on specific things. And then the second week, you're like, okay, now we saw them play and lose. Let's see if we can pick those kinds of same things apart or what we want to adapt from it. So it is, I think, a little weird to have that level of advantage. I can't remember how it was done last year when we talked about how spring was different last year. And I said I thought there were 3 days in a row. And I thought that gave the teams waiting less time. It was like one team would play on Saturday or like Friday, and then they would play on Sunday again or something. So the team waiting.
Raz told me everything is exactly the same in Twitch chat, and then because he said that, everyone else followed along and mocked me. So
wait, I might be wrong. I'm just gonna go look. Someone else fill for time while I look and see if I'm actually an idiot.
Okay. Well. Peter, right? Do you expect to see an upset given what you were just talking about with the extra time? Like, as in, do you think that there will be some surprises because of sort of this weird advantage that the lower bracket teams get?
I mean, of course, EG are going to win out. No, but as a serious point, there is a sort of serious point here, which is that I would be shocked. Let's say EG weren't in the playoffs, right? Let's say we fluffed our lines completely and Immortals made playoffs instead of us, right? I would be shocked, even though I would consider, let's say, 100 Thieves, Cloud9, TSM TL to be better than Immortals and Dignitas, right? I would be shocked if both the teams that went into the lower bracket got out.
Yeah.
Even though I think that they are better, right? Just because of how the system works. I think it favors teams in the lower bracket much more. So, yeah.
Caller, what do you... Oh, go ahead, Mark.
So... I was sort of right. The first weekend was more compressed. It was the 4th, the 5th, and then the next 2 games were the 7th and the 8th. So there's like a random gap day in the 6th or something. But it wasn't like a full week, whereas this time.
Because they had to make up for the week that we missed because of COVID. Because remember, we skipped a week in the middle of spring split, and so what they did was they crammed in. They had to fill for that extra week, and so that's why they did it. Where I think they had matches on like Wednesday and Thursday, and then I think they had like a gap day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
we figured it out. So that is a very different set of circumstances. So.
To be clear, I think this is one way that the NA system is better than the EU system, because in the EU system, if you have to play like the second weekend, especially in the EU system, is horrendous, right? Like no team in EU managed to win from the lower bracket except G2. They're the only teams that won last year. Any games, it was always the highest seed going through, because you have so few days in that second weekend. Like you can go from having to play a best of 5 into having to play a best of 5 with 1 day rest, which is the worst possible thing. If you have no days rest, then you can use the adrenaline to get you through the next day. But if you have 1 day rest, you're too tired to like have really productive scrims. You can have scrims, but they're not really productive. And if you have a rest day, then you lose a lot of the push, right? And that you saw that happen in Europe last year. So this system where you get a full week is a good thing.
Well, caller, I think we've talked a lot about the set of circumstances you called in about, Cloud9, etc. Is there anything you want to say before we move on to the next caller?
Basically, shout out to Alienware, shout out Gamefield, shout out to Travis and Mark and Peter Dunn. Good luck in your games, Peter. I wish you the best of luck, and I'll see you guys maybe next week if I end up posting something stupid for a take.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for the call. All
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark is off to grab the next caller. Okay, so the alert that came through, and the reason it wasn't muted was because it was like
the regional meta sometimes incentivizes play patterns that hamper growth.
Averting.
Yeah, I just see it more as like a kind of like a parent who's like gifted child started hanging out with the bad crowd, the NA folks, and it's just like he had so much potential.
we take so much talent and then we just ruin them. Okay, so go ahead.
I've got a potential counterpoint, which is with Huni or something like this, right? So maybe it's a mark of confidence in his team. Aggressive. Yeah, even managed to persuade Impact to go really aggressive at times this year. To me, I think it's a shame, right? Because that's the kind of League of Legends that I like to see. But it doesn't necessarily have to mean that he's gotten weaker, right? It could be because his team, he has more confidence in his team, right? It can go both ways. We can't look without seeing things behind the scenes.
I will say it's probably one of those feels bad when your jungler clears top to bot, theirs clears bot to top. You get dove on the wave and killed. You look bot, your jungler dies trying to contest Gromp, and you're just like, all right, this is go next fast.
Yeah, I don't like. Again, I'm just a viewer, right? I don't break above plat, so like I don't have the insight or not like eyes to discern everything. But I don't blame that on Ssumday. It's just I've seen what he can do, right? Like I've seen him literally throw a dead team into wins. And it's like, I want to unlock that, but it's been so many years and we haven't consistently gotten that. Like I have no explanation for that. And obviously we're never going to know what happens behind the scenes, but I would like to hear maybe Peter's take or Mark's take on, Travis can chime in as well.
I would love to hear, I don't want to ask Peter to 100% repeat himself from Dom's show, but just like the broader point, even removed a little bit maybe from the Ssumday example.
So the point was basically that players, when you come to North America, the type of gameplay that you need in order to be successful in North America is different from in other regions. Because, for instance, it was used as to compare to Europe, where in Europe your ranking as a player is based on how much you bluff, right? You need in Europe, everyone is at a very high level, so your advantages aren't just gained for free. You don't just get free laning phases. You don't just get, you do get solo kills maybe, but you don't just get free advantages. Whereas in North America, you don't have to work as hard for those edges. So you can you don't need to play on the edge as much, especially if you're stronger than your opponent. So that was the crux of the argument, and also it was a little bit that in academy people focus too much on negative plays. So the people that look really good in academy or have a really strong narrative about them are the people that tend to play safer. Because people aren't going to say, oh, look at that insane outplay. They're going to say, look at that time when he really, really messed up and ran it down. And they'll reward consistency, which is kind of not what you need if you want to be really, really successful. Like if you want to be at the top. So that was the crux of the argument. I paraphrased it a bit. Sorry if it doesn't make that much logical sense.
No.
But I spent like 45 minutes talking about it. And I tried to summarize in 30 seconds. But basically, you know that there's a lot of reasons why you can choose that you don't need to play on the edge, right? And maybe it's you can't do it anymore. In Sunday's case, I don't think it is. But it can also be because other people have the ability to do it more. Or sometimes you see that there are players who need to play on the edge more, so you dial it back in, and that can be the mark of a really good player. I mean, I can give an example of Humanoid, who in 2019 kind of really played on the edge. Like, you know, he would pick his assassins, he would just go in, try to 1v9 every single game. But then in 2020, when Shadow came in and he was the guy who could only do this stuff because he was a rookie, Humanoid kind of dialed it back. He played the control majors, he played more safe. People still remember his ints, but they weren't as frequent in 2019 as they were in 2020 as they were in 2019 because he dialed it back. So it can go both ways. I would say that Ssumday is a player who has historically been one of the best top laners in the entire world. And, you know, I would love to see it back in that form because it will push Impact to know that he has to work harder and push harder and because to be the best, right? So I love it when players are in that form, when they play to that level. But I'm sorry if this is not a hot take, but I don't know what's going on in 100 Thieves, but it can be either direction, right? It doesn't just have to be that he can't do it. It can be that he's choosing not to. Yeah.
Do you okay, so in this situation it would be he's choosing not to because he thinks that the team should play through, like the playmakers on that team should be like FBI or Ryoma or Closer, right, Peter?
Yeah, or he doesn't think he needs to, right? Because like maybe if you're in a really bad team, if you're a really good player in a really bad team, you may think, okay, I have to 1v9 every single game, right? Or else we just lose. Whereas if you have confidence in your teammates, maybe you think, okay, you know, these guys play this way, or this guy is super, super aggressive, right? And he's better at playing aggressive than me, but I'm better at playing, you know, defensive. So I will take the defensive burden and we'll let, you know, FBI play super aggressively. We'll let Closer play super aggressively. We'll let whoever 100 Thieves want to play mid for the MSS.
You know. If you were coaching 100T, would you be like, "Yo, Ssumday, I want you to play aggressive, like go for it"? You know, obviously, I'm not trying to put you in a position where like this is just a theoretical scenario.
I will tell you, like, Travis, that if you put me in charge of any team with any amount of players, I will tell them I want you to play more aggressive. So that's your answer, right? It's for me. My philosophy is it's never should you play aggressive. It's when should you play aggressive. So with Jizuke, I never told Jizuke don't play aggressive. I'm like, play aggressive in 1 minute, and that's it. That's purely the difference. So to me, I love aggressive players. I love Buffer. I think Buffer's
so if you were coaching the Shy, you'd be like, I need you to go more aggressive, man.
Yeah, you're not being aggressive enough, you know. But like, I mean, the thing where he TP'd back into lane and like he dies, and then he knows the jungler's still there because the jungler's helping the other top lane to push it out, and then he just TP's back to lane and just dies immediately second time, right? I mean, that's too aggressive, right? Like, pick your moments. Go aggressive in 30 seconds. If you TP to your tower, you can like chase him down the lane when he pushes the wave in. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I like the broader point, even removed from the Ssumday one, because I think it is something I've.
I also want to offer before we move off the point. I also want to offer some counterpoints to Peter, right? Like he's saying that he's choosing not to, but there's some things that are standard, whether you're weak side or strong side, which is like I feel like his laning is not as crisp. Like for example, Alphari, and I don't know a lot about him, but it seemed to be pretty clear consensus that despite being on such a weak team, he was like the top top lane player in LEC. And I don't know if I can say that if someday didn't have FBI, didn't have Huhi, didn't have Closer, that he would look like someday of the past.
That's fair. That's fair. It's possible top lane has gotten better in North America as well.
Oh yeah.
Sure, it's possible. It's possible. No, but okay, I take your point, right? But like, it's sure maybe you can say the interactions or the individual wave states are not as good. But the question is, he's gone from. I feel so embarrassed. Who was 100 Thieves jungler last season? It wasn't Meteus.
It was Meteus for a bit, and then
it was
Contracts.
Was it contract? The Onda contracts.
Contracts in chat just says hi.
It was Meteus and
Contracts is into a chat saying hello.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god! No, okay. I'll be honest. I knew Contracts was into a chat, so I'm just trolling him because
sure. Great save, Peter. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I like genuinely. Because
Jizuke in chat says he's in your team, bro.
No, because I thought Contracts was like a really top jungler in LCS last year. I'm just trolling. But like, there's a serious point, right? Which is that maybe for instance, he feels that if he spends a lot of his effort calling or setting up opportunities, then they're not going to be taken advantage of, right? Because I've definitely seen 100 Thieves dive top. I've definitely seen them.
Yeah,
we saw it in the lock-in.
Yeah. So it's not like it can't be done. But it's really hard to judge. But sure, obviously, like, go aggressive. I always like that. I always like that style of play, and I hope he'll do it more.
I hope so too.
Yeah, I was gonna say the broader point that I like is that you don't really know necessarily why something's happening so much as like you can say like, here's the symptom, don't know the cause exactly. And so the lack of aggressive NA play for a period of time, I can't tell you, like last year I was losing my shit that no one played any aggressive counter picks on red side, and we just like defaulted to tank versus tank, and like Wukong's got 60% solo queue win rate, highest presence champ in the fucking meta, and in North America we don't play it. And like, is that players saying that? Is that coaches? Exactly why sometimes you see a lack of aggressive counter picking or play styles or like in-game decision making. I don't always know, but I definitely.
Mark will never.
I just say like
opportunity to bring up 2020 Wukong top lane not being picked.
I will bring that up till I'm dead because it's literally like you just aren't as a region.
I know.
Like it just baffles my like. Imagine like Azir just got reworked and he was 60% win rate in mid lane and none of your fucking mid laners played him. Like you would lose your mind.
Unforgivable sin of North America and Mark's mind was not picking Wukong in 2020. And I by the way, I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I just love that at any it's
a consistent problem at top laner specifically too. Someone else just pointed out, but the Aatrox was also when Aatrox got reworked, we didn't play him. When Victor Top was broken, we didn't play him. Like anytime there's an aggressive top lane champion, you can be sure that North America for a period was not playing him. But I think they're a lot better this year. Whether that's the players, the coaches, I don't know who turned it around, but I do think it's
bring in players from other regions for a top. And then Red Factor, anything you want to shout out before we go to a quick break?
Yeah, most definitely. I want to shout out Travis for the awesome content, Mark for being in the content. I followed your Patreon back when that was a thing.
Oh shit, that's a real OG right there.
But at least you're doing content with LCS and with other people in the scene. Thank you, Peter, for being in recent podcasts. I'm loving your presence here and your takes. Shout out to Alienware. Last time I was here was near Black Friday. I ended up getting a 240 hertz monitor. Now my old feeble boomer eyes can see the crisp 240 hertz refresh rate. And you know what else can help you out with boomer senses? Game Feel. I've been trying out their watermelon flavor. They got it down pat. So grab yourself a can. Try it out.
Very good. Thank you so much, Red Factor, for the call.
Cheers.
All right. Speaking of Game Fuel, we're going to take a quick break to talk about Game Fuel. First off, last time we were on the show, or last time we did the show, I think their site, gamefuel.com, which you can go check out in the chat. You can do ! Game Fuel, and YouTube, you can go look in the description. They were out of stock on like everything. And again, I like to think it's because of me.
We crashed it, man.
And having nothing to do with like Courage or anybody else. But they've restocked. And they're now available in California. So I think some are still, like some of the flavors might still be out of stock. So if you have some issues, you can use that Amazon link, but which is in the YouTube description as well. And also if you do !GameFuel in the chat. But you can also hit notify me when available, which I think is kind of nice. That's a feature that they have on their website. But really do appreciate everybody who's been tweeting and shouting them out, shouting me out and all that. It's been really helpful. I promise you they've noticed it. Be sure to check out GameFuel.com and then use code Travis, because when you check out with code Travis, you save 5% on your order of Mountain Dew Game Fuel, and that is very much appreciated. So thank you so much to everybody who goes and does that, and thank you to Game Fuel for sponsoring the show. Appreciate all the support. And again, we didn't have, I know California was having issues ordering before, and it looks like that's been resolved. So be sure, if you're in California, go check it out if you missed it the last time, or if you went there before and you didn't see it. Thank you so much to Game Fuel for sponsoring the show. All right, on to the next caller. Thank you. Nodak gifted another sub to Free Buju and to Jizuke. OPTSM Fad gifted a sub to Empire and Contracts. Then Peruchu with Prime Crypto. Kristen for 6 months. Irish Pigs. Boater Michael for 29 months. For Kobe, thank you for the 19 months. Little Sleepy. OPTSM Fan gifted a sub. Oh, I got those. And then Nodak just gifting out 12 subs, 7 subs, 30 subs. My God. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And it looks like we have a caller here. Yeah, the caller got here before Mark, which I thought was funny. Gotti is here. Gotti boy, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from St. Cloud, Minnesota.
And what do you want to talk about on the show?
So my take is that Deftly should get the award for Most Improved Player this split. I think that he's been super consistent for EG. The man simply does not die, and he still has the third best DPM among ADCs. So I know a lot of people have been talking about Dignitas players like Fake God and Soligo, but I really think that Deftly has come into his own, and he's just been a rock in the bot lane for this team. And if there's one thing that I know when I'm looking for an ADC in my solo queue games, it's just consistency and knowing that the guy can carry if he has a solid laning phase, and I think that he's done that for this team.
Before we get to the Peter take on this, to explain why he agrees, Mark, do you think like Neo should be eligible for this, given like he was previously? I think he can't be rookie, right?
Well,
so
Neo might be able to be rookie because he only played 2 games as Asta in LCS, I believe. So I think he might qualify for rookie. Regardless, I think like Soligo might be another example of someone who could win it. I think Dom had a tweet about it, where like just in terms of raw level of difference, like during his time on 100 Thieves, Soligo had posted some of like the worst mid lane stats in games in LCS history or something, and now he's like doing fine. I don't think you have to pretend he's a world beater or anything, but he's like doing well, and that is a huge turnaround from when most LCS fans last seen him. If you did see, it depends like kind of how you're rating this. Like, are you including his academy games where he was clearly a lot better than what he had shown in the LCS? Then like maybe he's not that improved, but I think I would do it by LCS appearances, and in that case, Soligo has leveled up a ton. Whereas I don't think Deftly I would ever say was amongst the worst performing 80 carries ever. Like I don't think he ever had that low of a bottom to compare to. And I'm not trying to flame Soligo here. I'm just saying that like in terms of output in the games, like Soligo was usually losing pretty hard. So definitely I think he's improved for sure, but I don't know if he's kind of, it just feels like a bigger difference in the last time that I saw Soligo than the last time I saw Deftly on the LCS stage.
Emily says Neo played 4 games in 2019 on Optic.
Oh, was it 20? 4? Okay.
I mean, Neo can't count as most improved. I mean, honestly, I'm really confused about Definitely, because people kept telling me that this guy was like going to drag the corpse of his he was going to be such a hard weight that he was going to drag everyone into the gutter. So I was like, holy moly, did we make a mistake? Did I miss something? I mean, honestly, I don't think Definitely can be the most improved if he was never bad. I mean, I don't understand. Has the stream gone down?
No, I got a little bit of lag there too for a second. Okay. I think it's okay.
Oh.
But I mean, to me, so I don't want to flame Saligo, but I would say that Saligo probably deserved most improved player, and I don't think it's close, because I think that he has been the one who is arguably the most responsible for Dignitas doing as well as they are this season, from coming out from kind of nowhere, because he wasn't the one who was people were higher on Insanity and Palafox, coming in, and I think that he's completely blown them out of the water. He's been super good. He should have killed Perks 1v1, but that was mainly Perks hinting. But I've never understood the hatred for Definitely, right? I think he definitely got a bit better, but I don't think he got insanely better. I think Definitely is the Definitely that he always was, and now he has a better team around him, so now his strengths show more. I mean, so I think Definitely. I think Definitely has been a good player. I say that he has improved. He's got a lot of things that he still needs to work on. He's not the finished product yet. But I would just say that he's had a career where he has played with a lot of. Let me pick my words here.
I don't want to flame.
Yeah, he's had a career where he's played with in a lot of rough circumstances. Let's say he hasn't had so something like Tactical. You can say Tactical's come in. He's born into the right family. He has the best support. He has diamond encrusted, bowls and plates.
Tactical is privileged. He is the 1% of rookie players.
Whereas Definitely is not the 1%. Definitely is has had to grind his way up. He's had to fight his way up. He's gone through all of these difficult situations, and I respect the hustle. And maybe I think that for that, over the course of several years, maybe if you compared to the last time Definitely was in LEC, you could push him up there, and I think he should definitely be talked about in that category. But Saligo has to be the number one for me. I mean, he's just been so much. He's overperformed so much.
Gotti boy, why do you think Definitely sucks so much? I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. On
it's funny. In order to convince us that your take is right, you need to convince us that he sucked more previously.
Yeah.
Well, I will say I am a diehard C9 fan, and back when he played for C9 for a little bit, even that, I mean, obviously him coming in and Sneaky being gone and whatnot, I was just anything was going to be worse. So it just had a bad taste in my mouth. And honestly, I just never felt like this guy had that carry mentality. It always felt like he was just kind of sitting there. And I feel like on EG, at least what Peter was talking about, he's influencing his players to play more aggressively and things like that. And I think that this team is just a better fit for him. And that improvement, I guess I've just seen. So maybe it's just a team diff. I don't know. But I was curious just kind of on how he has grown as a player just in the time that he's been with EG.
Sure. I think that's fair. I think that on EG, so I will say that the biggest thing that surprised me when I joined EG was how aggressive Impact likes to play the game. He's really, holy moly, his comms are. This is a team that wants to fight, and that's not his reputation at all. But I mean, in EG, look, definitely knows he's got Ignar around him. He knows his team is Ignar, Jizuke, Svenska, and Impact, right? So, they're all going in, and sometimes you need somebody to clean up afterwards, right? Because if you're going in as well, then you're not getting PO because they're going to kill the enemy AD carry. So I think it's a good fit for him. But obviously, he has to be able to play both sides coming into playoffs, right? He can't just be the cleanup all the time. And obviously, we'll see how that happens. But I think that he's done well this season, and he's overperformed even my expectations. So I'm pretty happy with where we are.
Very good. Well, hey, thank you so much, Gotti. I appreciate the raising the conversation on this, because I think obviously we didn't talk too much about that before. So thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, shout out to Game Fuel, Alienware, Travis. Honestly, LCS has been a little sad, but you've really kept it interesting. So I appreciate all your content, Mark and Peter. And then just lastly, I want to shout out the NDSU League of Legends Club.
Nice. Thanks so much for the call.
Thanks.
Hey, Mark, before you grab... Oh, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was going to say I'm looking forward to Peter was talking about preparing cheeses. I'm excited to see Deathly's Heimerdinger make a reappearance in playoffs.
I brought that up in my interview with Deathly too, where I was like, when are you bringing out the Heimerdinger?
Heimerdinger is so 2019. You think that we don't have other cheeses besides Heimerdinger?
Mark,
everyone loves a throwback.
I'm guessing the last call isn't about this. And because we were talking about Siligo, I just want to steal a couple minutes. What do you think of the idea of, and Peter, I apologize, but do we think that Dig's coaching staff is just coach of the split?
Yes.
I mean, that team overperformed expectations so much. And I know like that they ended up in fifth, but like constantly taking games off people. It was really close that they ended up getting fifth. And I don't know. I was just thinking about the Siligo stuff and all that, and this is something I've had in my mind. But I thought we hadn't really talked about this on the show, and I felt like it was something worth talking about.
I just say it directly, Travis. I think yes. Like, I mean, I don't think there's any discussion. Like, you can, like, who are you going to argue for instead? TSM, right? Because it's not TL, it's not C9, right? Because those people expected them to be like 17-1 or 16-2, and they're not, right? I mean, they're good, but they're not as far. They're not at the level that people thought with those strength of roster. So then the question is, who else is it, right? And I think the clear answer is that Dignitas. I'm not even going to make the argument for each, right? Like, I mean, it's Dignitas.
Yeah, I think Dig's probably the heavy favorite. TSM, they looked pretty rough through their first weekend, but I think at least in terms of expected level from the talent that was acquired, second is good. I think it's better than most people expected, which is why they can probably be in the conversation. I think most people had them power ranked third or fourth. So like it is higher, but Dig, we did this on the dive, went through our power rankings from the preseason, and then what we do is like every position each team is off is like minus a point or whatever. And Dig just fucking murdered us. We all had Dig like 8th or 9th and they're 5th, and so like it just wrecked our.
And it's also tough. I feel like it's so hard to go by standings too, because like they were so close, right? Like the distance between second and 5th in this situation is like not the way it normally is.
Yeah, and to Peter's point, like, okay, TL is third. We all thought they should be second or first. Why is that? Oh, well, they maybe underperformed a little bit, And I don't think coaches necessarily deserve the blame, but that's just kind of how it goes in the ecosystem where you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, so you kind of just have to paint with broad strokes.
I mean, the argument I could see so TL experimented a lot this split, right? But you don't get points, right, for experimenting, and you shouldn't get exceptions, right? But the argument I could see for TSM is that TSM had a rough lock-in. They had a rough first 2 weeks of the season, and people were saying, could this team miss playoffs? And they got their stuff together. They found a way to play, and they found a way to win, right? And even some of their losses, like when they lost to Dignitas, they should have won that game. They just should have won that game. So I could see the argument for TSM, but to me it's TSM or Dig, and I would always say Dig. And that's it.
Kamikaze Platypus playing devil's advocate and saying, if you subtract the games where Dig just were kind of randomly given the win, what does their score look like?
Do I get to subtract the games where TSM randomly got Barons from their opponents who should have gotten the Baron?
I guess so. Underneath,
do we get to play if with every single team's wins and losses?
Maybe. You could do whatever you want, Mark. It's your vote. Yeah. I see what you mean, though. It's just like you end up in this weird world of all these hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Okay, Kamikaze Platypus says, at least read the whole statement, Travis. So just so that I'm not paraphrasing, the struggle I see with just outright giving it to Digstaff is like, how many of their games were the other team giving away a win? If we subtract those games, and what is their standing? Like, you can see, or you can devil's advocate any team into being coach of the split candidate. There, I said the full statement.
Didn't their point defeat their own point?
Well, I've got to put it like this. So this is going to sound a bit weird, but in a game of Pro League of Legends, a team either wins the game or they lose the game. No, that sounds really stupid. Okay, so say you have Team A or Team B, right? So
there's been times, by the way, where that's not the case. Where there was a bug, and rather than remaking, they just.
I'm sorry, I just realized how stupid that sounds when I said it out loud. Like, okay, so you have Team A and Team B in the game, right? And Team A wins the game. Okay,
I agree with that. We need to develop coaching staff more.
Shut up, Travis. Let him talk.
Continue.
So let's say Team A, like, there's two ways the game could go, right? Either Team A like wins the game and they play the game super well and they like outplay the other team, or kind of like Team B throws it to them and they let them win the game, right? And sometimes being there to catch the throw is like important, but it goes both ways, right? And it depends. To me, Dignitas play in a certain way which makes it easy for teams to throw into them, number one. But I think also it means that teams that people are generally underrating. Well, I just use this for EG, right? I think like EG going into playoffs, like how many games did the opponent either win the game or lose the game, right? Versus EG winning the game or losing the game because they threw the game, right? So there is something to be said there, right? But I still would give it to Dick.
Yeah.
I have a question. Have you ever heard of John Madden?
I mean, I know he has a really a popular computer game that I'm really bad at.
Not a computer.
He was,
yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's he has a football game, American football game.
Yeah.
But John Madden he was a coach and then became a commentator, and he was really well known for saying like blindingly obvious things. He would say like the team that scores more points generally wins the game. And I see a future where Peter Dunn becomes the League of Legends John Madden.
Yeah, sure. I feel that way. All I will say is that as a coach, like knowing that your team has full agency to either win the game or lose the game is a good thing. That's all.
Yeah, it's important. All right, let's grab the next caller. Mark is already off. Thank you to it's Kyler Time 201 No Dak gifted a sub to our last caller, Gotti Boy, and then good job Schwarzchild. Thank you for the prime. I am not the NSA is here. NSA, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Merced, California.
Merced, California. What do you want to talk about in the show?
I want to talk about how EG is proving to be one of the better opponents to face in the region if they're intending to compete internationally. The ways that the solo lanes obviously impact in Jizuke are constantly applying pressure to their opponents. Is much more similar to what the opponents are what NA is going to face internationally in regions like EU, Korea, and China. And everyone knows how good Impact is, but I think Jizuke's gone underappreciated, especially.
Well, Jizuke, before we throw it over to Peter, who again will just be like, yeah, I agree. Jizuke, what do you think of all the criticism? You say underappreciated, but he's been actually criticized a ton. People say everything from like he's the worst mid laner to he's just inting all the time. They call him Jacuzzi, sometimes. So what do you say to the critics who have said that Jizuke is not doing well?
I say look at his damage numbers. In this LCS spring split, he is 570 DPM. He has the highest CSD at 10 minutes, and he's constantly making plays that few to any other top laner probably wouldn't make. And I think that should be appreciated. If you're actually going to compete internationally, you should want people who are going to push the limits and actually limit test this.
Gotcha. Well, again, before we get to Peter, Mark, what do you think of this?
I mean, even just on a playstyle level, I would probably agree with it. Like to Peter's point about wanting to play more aggressive and some of the other things we talked about in the episode. Even if you don't think EG's like the best team, I think that they are challenging people and trying to push things. There are some areas where I wish, they were a little bit more consistent on. But overall, I mean, I do like the approach that the roster seems to have.
All right. Peter, is this what you're trying to do? Is it actually like, who cares if we go to Worlds if we lose in group stage? So let's make sure that if we actually get there, we have the aggression we need.
I mean, all I will say is I really like this caller, and you should get more of these callers on. No, but as a serious point, so I think Impact and Jizuke have been playing really, really aggressive, and sometimes you will play too aggressive. And it's funny that whenever people talk about Jizuke, they talk about the times where he tower dives twice against Saligo and dives twice right to the tower. And not about the time where he's 50 CS up against Perkz in like the first 10 minutes of the game, right? When Perkz has counter pick and sure, Perkz picks Yasuo into Orianna, right? But like the fact that he's pushing his advantage and he's getting these massive leads against some of the best mid laners in the league. And Impact, I don't need to say anything about Impact. It's obvious that how Impact's been playing, right? But I think that Jizuke, I don't think Jizuke is a coin flip player. Like I think that he plays, or people play into it. I mean, I know Impact likes to do it because it winds him up a little bit, but like I think that Jizuke has consistently been the best laning mid laner in the league this split, right? And I don't think it's even close, right? But you can say that there are other things in the rest of the game that EG as a team need to work on, and you can't just put all of the blame for those things on Jizuke. Like some of it is on Jizuke, but some of it is on his teammates. But if you're going to look at pure raw stats, like you do for like the argument for Alphari being MVP, you have to consider Jizuke out there. And I think that's only good for the region if you have players who are willing to play like that, because his stats are insane for laning. If you don't just look at champion matchups, but you consider how much he's been roaming. Where his numbers are, because he's been roaming really, really a lot, and also how high his matchup is. So there's two different stats you can have. There's stats for how well you're laning versus the other team, but there's also stats for how well you are laning in a matchup versus how far ahead you should be in that matchup versus everyone in the world, right, who's playing that matchup. And if you kind of look at those kind of stats, Jizuke is really far up. So I'm really happy working with him this year.
Mark, is it undisputed that Jizuke is the best laner or mid laner in lane this split?
I mean, using a lot of the metrics that Peter's talking about, yes. I was just looking at the solo kill thing because I knew Jizuke was tied for first in the league previously. What was interesting though is I didn't realize Perkz had 6 of his solo kills pre-15 minutes, whereas Jizuke only has 3 there, but Jizuke has 9 solo kills. So I guess a lot of them are coming in side lane situations later on in the game, which was interesting. I didn't just looked at it. But in terms of CSD, he's number 1 in the league. He's got the highest 4% in the league. He's doing it with a pretty middling jungle proximity. And like we already said, solo kills are up there, kills assists are up there. Perkz is kind of close to in a number of these. I think in that regard, maybe you could argue it back and forth a little bit. That Perkz is probably the second best mid laner, and I would want to do a deep dive because they are pretty comparable in most of their stats, and even just when I think about their gameplay, they both are more aggressive. They both do some things where you're like, whoa, dude, I don't know about that. Like the Aurelia game for Perkz, just to give an example that, because everyone can think of Jizuke examples, but Perkz has done a number of these where you're like, oh my god, dude. So I would say it's probably between those two. For raw laning, it's either Jizuke or Perkz.
Mark, do you think that Jizuke seems to be one of the players that I see so many people trash on? Like it's similar, even like when Ryoma was on 100T for a long time, or like there's some of these players that like the community and some of the pundits tend to like gravitate towards to trash on. Yes. Do you think that with Jizuke it's like I, an ignorant pleb watching the LCS, I don't know how much of that is deserved. I mean, obviously setting aside like personal attacks and stuff, how much of the criticism is deserved?
Like a portion of it, I'd say, because I think one of the things, and we were talking about this, I keep saying we're talking about this on the dive, but also I saw like Doublelift and Meteos in their co-stream talking about like they were being critical of Someday a little bit. It said, and they were talking about how he seems like a player that gets a free pass when he's underperforming, and I think the ways in which people underperform can vary quite a bit. Some players' underperformance does not catch your eye, and I would say that this split, like Jensen has been someone who I think has underperformed to his own level, but he's not like running it down. And so, like, when you look at his own teammate in particular, Tactical gets a lot of the flame for, like, oh, why is Team Liquid not dominating the standings this split? And you look at, like, the time he gets stunned as Tristana or does this dumb stuff. But I think there's other times where Jensen has just not been a factor. And I think people gravitate towards the big blow-up mistakes and underperformances. Then they look at the player who just, like, to Peter's point, takes a matchup that should dominate and goes even in the lane. Or something, you know, like if you're taking draft resources and changing the way the comp plays to theoretically have pressure and be taking turret plates or whatever it is, and you're not doing that, that's not as notable as when Jizuke takes Lucian and dashes into a turret and kills himself twice in a row, which happened one of the games this split. And I think it makes it a lot easier for people to harp on those kinds of players when their bad moments look like that versus a player who sometimes lacks the confidence to do what the pick is supposed to do or exploit an opening when he could have done it. So I would say the criticism for Jizuke is often warranted in the respect that, like, yeah, he does make big mistakes that really catch your eye. But I think there's other players who are making worse mistakes, you could argue, that is just not as notable, for example.
I will say that whenever Jizuke, no matter how Jizuke is playing, you know you're going to have fun watching afterwards.
Yeah,
that's all I will say. But I think really like the Dignitas game has really kind of affected people's perception of him too much in one direction. Like to me, I think that he's a lock for you know what are they called, the MVP leagues or like first
all pro.
Yeah, all pro, right? I think he's a lock for all pro. But where you rank him is entirely, like I can see the arguments at every, like if you prefer somebody more consistent, then fine. But if he doesn't even make all pro, then I lose faith in this region.
Mark, are you going to vote for Jizuke in your all pro? Because otherwise Peter Dunn might lose faith in you.
I haven't thought about it for mid lane at all. I would say that Jizuke and PoE were two that I was leaning towards, and then the third was pretty open. And maybe it is Jizuke. I haven't honestly, like I said, I haven't even thought about my MVP third spot yet. So I don't know. Maybe even if I end up, making the right decision in Peter's mind, I have a feeling that he will be disappointed in the region come the reveal.
I mean, I've seen power rankings that put like Jizuke as like 8th best mid laner in the league, and like on laning, and like holy.
Did we do power rankings for mids this split? I don't think we got to them. I think it was too compressive a season.
I mean, so somebody linked me like a power ranking. I don't know who did it, but it was like they had RJS as like 4 and like Jizuke as 8 and things like this, and I was just thinking, holy bug. But I can't remember where I saw it. But maybe it was just like somebody trolling. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think I saw it either. Unfortunately, I would love to have seen it.
Is Perks guaranteed to be on an all pro? Mark.
Wait, Jizuke said, Mark, do you remember any other play but Lucian game that you thought was in? It's a blur between when these games were in lock-in or not. Because was there a Zoe game that I'm trying to remember? Was that a lock-in game? There was a play that also stands out from a Zoe game that was super, super ridiculous. I can't remember.
Peter, do you remember? Did Jizuke have a big? Peter was adjusting his mask, but
yeah,
did he have a big Zoe game during after lock-in, like during the regular season?
I mean,
Empire says it was lock-in versus Dignitas.
It was lock-in, maybe.
It was lock-in.
Okay, so you don't remember anything.
That even proves my point with Jizuke calling me out like that. Is that like the big moments when he does like that Zoe game, they just get like implanted into your brain because it just sticks out to you.
Jizuke says, because to me, I have been consistent every game, but this split at least.
I mean, look, but so this. Remember, we had the caller earlier who raised that point about Academy, and I think this like how these things fit in your mind for Academy is actually a self-selecting process. But what I will say that a lot of things that have been counted as ints are not actually ints, right? Like if there was a situation where, I know you're going to look at the games later, Mark, but like against Cloud9, the game we lost against Cloud9, where he takes tier 1 tower, Fudge TPs on him, and 5 people collapse on him, and they just kill him for free. Well, they kill him after he takes the tower, and then we get mid tier 1, and we get like full tempo on the map, and we take all the jungle camps on the bot side, and people in the post-match thread are like, oh my god, Jizuke inted so hard here. And he's inted the whole game. But actually, if you're sending 5 people to kill him, and we're getting objectives, fine, great. I love it, right? But I will say that that you know, if you play this kind of game, I wish people would remember more his like Rise game against CLG and less his Lucian game.
Or his Echo game, which was, I thought, really good too, with the split pushing and stuff. Another good example of this is, so I was looking quickly at the deaths per game, and Jizuke is second in the league in deaths per game.
Sure.
And only one worse is Ablaze Olive. And I think that's another thing that people will over gravitate towards, you could say, for a negative stat. When you say, okay, he's died the second most times of any mid laner in the league. Clearly not consistent, right? But you can also say, well, some players are KDA players. And that's something you would never say about Jizuke. Sure. But the KDA player insult or negging of that is something that is harder to reinforce than just saying, hey, look at this big number I don't like, which is another thing that I think for even myself, you know, when you start checking your biases, it's like, yeah, that's something that I'm probably biased towards, which is the big bad number that I see.
But obviously you can't have all players being KDA players or all players being like, Jizuke's in the chat, right? All players being like aggressive players, right? You know, and you've got to have a balance in the team. And obviously, like, it's obvious who's being aggressive on our team and who's playing cleanup, right? But you can't have a team that has nobody playing cleanup.
Right, which is funny when we talk about KDA players, because that was the big rub on Deathly for a long time that people held against him was, oh, he's the KDA player. But if you have one player like Jizuke is willing to start the fights in a lot of ways, and then you have the players willing to like, oh, looks like a good one. I'll follow up and clean up. You know, like that is, to your point, the balance that teams need to find.
Just a quick question, since we're talking about mid laners and we were talking a little bit about All Pro. So, Mark, PoE, Jensen, Jizuke, Perks. Like, it's an interesting situation, right? Because one of those can't make it into your All Pro. I kind of want to challenge you on that and see, you know, you think Jizuke probably up there.
Yeah, well, I think it's especially weird too, because eventually you get into the thing where we're talking about the play styles, and I think like the person I'm comparing with like PoE and say Jizuke are pretty far apart in the spectrum of champion pool, role in the team, play style. Like PoE generally plays scaling mages and doesn't play aggressively through laning phase a ton unless it's like during sort out roams or speak against and he's coordinating with his team. Whereas Jizuke, like we were talking about with the solo kills, will push his own advantages quite aggressively. Whereas PoE only has 2 solo kills the whole split. But he's playing scaling mages, and his role in this team is to do that. So, like, am I going to, like, when you start comparing, it starts to be a little apples to oranges, and at some point you just pick one that you kind of thought was better.
And to be clear, like when I said I lose faith in the region, it's not that I don't think you can justify not putting Jizuke on the team, right? Like, I think you can make an argument that the other three guys should be there. But it just shows that you're valuing safety, you're valuing like scaling, you're valuing like, you're valuing like all the things that I don't, maybe I don't value those things high enough. Right? That's all I was saying. But it's about what you're valuing when you make that pick.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's tough because you also on the outside never have an idea of what's going on in the team. For why people play this way or what they are trying to do.
All right. Well, NSA, is there anything that you would like to shout out before we close out the show? Sorry, I know that we kind of took over your topic and went long with it, but hopefully that's okay.
It happens.
Anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out Tim Sevenhusen. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. He does some really great content on Academy, and he runs a great stat site called Oracle's Elixir, and you should go check him out, as well as run it.
Yeah, run it. Thank God. I was worried you were going to shout out everything he does except for the show he does with me. Yeah, thanks for the shout out. I think Tim is great and doesn't get enough attention, so I appreciate it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, everybody go watch Run It on my channel. And then afterwards you can check out the other stuff Tim does. Thanks so much, NSA, for the call. All right. That is the show. Mark, what do you got to plug?
Nothing doing.
Really? You got nothing?
Check out my Twitter to see a cute bakery looking cafe set up at my house, in my apartment.
That's okay. Well, go check out Mark's Twitter so that you can see that stuff. That's great. Really appreciate it. Peter, what do you got for us? What do you want to shout out? What do you want to plug?
Just to say thank you for having me on, and go check out the Amateur Academy Proving Ground Circuit that's going on right now. Giant Slayers tournament is going on. We've got both EG Academy and EG Prodigies in it. It's been a really fantastic tournament so far. Go and support, promotion of development of NA talent. That's all I said.
Didn't you say that there was a potential matchup between the two?
It happened today. The matchup was not the racist. Both games were decided.
Oh, that's right. That's what you were plugging in the beginning. Yes.
So it wasn't the greatest series, but yeah, go watch it. Proving Grounds is a great system that Riot have put in place this year, giving the amateur teams the ability to show their level, giving people that didn't get the chance to turn around to those scouts and say, screw you guys, you should have picked me instead of whoever you picked. And I think it's a great initiative. It's going to be great for NA talent in the future. Go support it. Go watch it.
What scouts? I mean, it's an interesting concept you have there that people in North America would be watching these games and scouting them for talent.
I saw Papa Smith in the game today.
Okay, so he's there at least. Empire says, who scouts the scouts? Anyway, thank you so much, Peter. Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate, as always, the show. Peter, thanks for coming on, and best of luck in playoffs. Sorry. Mid-season showdown. For me, I've got some other cool stuff coming out this week. I did a bunch of interviews, so go check those out. They'll be on my channel this week. We have a Run It coming where we are going to, I think Tim is going to simulate a full bracket essentially for all of Mid-Season Showdown, where he uses some stats to basically pretend those are the stats that allow you to win, and then see what the whole bracket is, and then we'll be able to compare that against the results. So completely unscientific, and who knows if it will end up being anything. But how cool would it be if he gets it all right? Tune in to Run It to find out. But yeah, thanks everyone. This has been Hotline League episode 164.